During one of the live Q&A sessions for the SketchUp Fundamentals for Furniture Design course that we did recently, I mentioned that a good way to learn SketchUp is to model furniture maybe that you have, which is really nice because you can work from dimensions that you can take right off of the piece, or to work from photographs. And after the Q&A session, I had a nice discussion with one of the students about this, asking how I tend to work from photographs when I do that. And I did this piece recently, working from a photograph, and I thought I would just kind of talk in general about the way I go about this sort of thing. Here you can see the image that I started with, and this is just a screen grab off of the internet. And I had some basic overall dimensions and the photograph, and that was basically it. Everything else I had to make up on my own. So anyway, let's get into a new image or a new SketchUp file, and we'll take a look at this. So here we are in a new SketchUp session, and the first thing I'm going to do is import the image, and I'm going to show two different ways of doing this. For the first one, I'm going to choose New Matched Photo, and this image almost works. It's not quite perfect, but I'll show you the general setup. And sometimes it's worth doing this because you can at least check to see if the image will work for this. When the image comes in, you'll see all of this stuff accompanying it. The green and the red dashed lines are supposed to run off to the vanishing points in the image, and so you have to set them up for that. And you can move the whole line, or you can grab the ends. What I find is that it's really useful to make these things long because you can move them very small amounts and get a very accurate, and you can zoom, by the way. You can't orbit, but you can zoom. But you find some places in the image that work for this sort of stuff, and it's just a matter of moving these things around. You can see as I move the lines, the yellow line is the horizon, and this, like I say, this image isn't bad. It's not perfect, and it's not the method, so I didn't use this method to model this thing. But now if I bring the origin, so where the three axes cross down here, and put it at this corner, for example, you can see how it very slightly veers away from the leg as it goes up. And if I bring it over to the other side, you can see it does it in the opposite direction. So this isn't a great image for match photo. You do need an image that hasn't been cropped so that the center of the photograph is the center of the image that you're importing. And it needs to be a 3/4 view like this, so that you've got lines that run very clearly off to vanishing points. So if you take your own photographs of furniture, you can ensure that they're not getting manipulated in any way before you insert them. So instead of using Match Photo when I modeled this piece, I did it a little differently, and so I'm going to start a new file. We won't save this. I'm going to switch to the front view and go in here, and I'm going to import that same image, but this time I'm just going to use it as an image, not as new matched photo. And I'm just going to stand it up here. And so the size at this stage is not terribly important. What I'm looking for here is something that will give me some clues about the heights of the various parts, and from that I can kind of work out by making an educated guess what a lot of the other dimensions are. I do know the width of this piece and the depth, so I've got some information in that respect, but as well as the height. So, but I know that I can't take all those dimensions off of this image because of the perspective view that it's shot in. So what I'm going to do in this case, because I know the overall height, I'm going to start at this with a guideline right at the back corner of the leg here. And then I'm going to come up here straight up, and I'm going to go up to the top and get that pretty close. It's not perfect, and I will say that if you were trying to do a perfect copy of a piece or reproduction piece, this is probably not the way you want to go. You probably don't even want to work from a photograph. You'd want to be able to take measurements off the real thing. And here I've placed a vertical guideline that runs pretty close to the leg. It's close enough for what I need here. And now I know that this thing is overall height is 51.5 inches. So if I click at that intersection, come up here and click again, you can see what it's showing me for the dimensions of this. So if I come up here, click again, it shows me the length. I'm going to type 51.5 and hit enter, and I get asked if I want to resize the model, and I'll choose yes. And then, because I want to start my model at the origin, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of that, and I'm going to shift that back a little ways so that I've got a place to work here. But this will be standing in the background, and now I can use what I've got here, and I can come up here and like it's showing me about 39 and 17/32, 37/64, somewhere in there. So maybe we'll make that, let's see what 39.625 looks like. That's pretty close. So let's say the legs are going to be 39 5/8 long. And then maybe up here I know that, you know, maybe the top of this thing is going to be about 3/4 of an inch. Some of this I also use kind of what I could work with in my shop, or what I'd like to work with in my shop. So I'm leveraging that. But now I know that 11 1/8 makes will get me the side of this piece of the case section. And these numbers won't be absolutely perfect, but if I come down here, I can see that, you know, this top rail is probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.5, something in that neighborhood there. I can figure out about how high the top of the stretchers need to be, you know, 17 inches, you know. So we can kind of work from that, and then again you use kind of an educated guess about how the different dimensions would work together, or how do you want to make it. And so you don't need every last bit of information. The other thing, like for example with the side of this thing, if I know that this is 11 1/8, I don't know what the angle is, I don't know what the width of the top is, but how high do I want to make this part here? Evidently I've got to fit a drawer in there. And so maybe, and you can't work from this dimension and have it be real accurate, but I don't know, maybe it's going to be somewhere in the 5.5 range. What does that do to the drawer height? You can think about those things. Or what's the angle that you're going to end up with here? How wide do you want this top section to be? These are things that you get to kind of make up your mind on, but the point is you can figure out what you need, and once you get started creating the model, then you can kind of flesh it out. So in the case of this model, I have done the box joints, but like the base, for example, I've just put the parts in. There is no joinery at this stage, and I won't put joinery in until I'm much farther along with my design. The case, again, there's only the box joints. I haven't really done anything else with these pieces. The drawer doesn't even exist yet. The case, the top, I've sort of figured out about what I want for the dimensions here, but it's all still a bit up in the air, and we can refine that. Anyway, that's a couple of ways to work from an image, and I would encourage you to, if you haven't done this, to find some piece of furniture that you're interested in and give this a try. And if you've got any questions, by all means, feel free to reach out in the comments.